Today we have Adolphus Lau, who's a co-founder of Vocadian. He's a former analyst at McKinsey. He's pursued his bachelor's from the University of Toronto in architecture, and he then went on to pursue two separate masters from the University of Hong Kong in urban planning and health economics. So, Adolphus, without much ado, um, you know, the startup that you're currently pursuing, Vocadian, it describes itself as a health tech startup revolutionizing the future of human performance and circadian health, starting with worker safety. Now, that's a lot of words out there. That's a lot of big words. Could you parse it out for us?
Yeah, first, thank you for having me, Krish. It's a true honor to be in your podcast. Yeah, absolutely. So with Vocadian, the vision we have is how to improve human health. So one such large gap is in your everyday life, right? You have 24 hours. I think many people would agree that your health is better monitored in your private life. So that means your life beyond your work hours. But what's within the work hours, right? I think most of the times in work hours, the most important stakeholders would be your company and the individuals. But I think quite unfortunately, in this more kind of capitalist market, people are often quite dedicated to work. And it's nothing wrong to be dedicated to work, right? We work very hard. But I think in the market, there's a lack of a more evidence-based tool to monitor your health and wellness during the work hours. And it is exactly for this context, we want to bring in more evidence-based tools into the work hours. And that would immediately enhance, right, the safety kind of or the entire structure of how health is managed throughout a person's everyday life. And Vocadian, quite special. So Voca and Cadian. So it actually means vocal. So our core advantage is voice biomarker, and then Cadian, it actually means circadian science. So it is the first entry point in our market where we leverage voice to detect different sort of health conditions. And when we started the company, we started with the most high impact segment, which we identify would be those in the more kind of manual heavy industries where your cognition plays a very large role in determining your wellness. So imagine you're in a construction site and you are in a kind of a site where you are like 20 meters under the ground level, and then you were walking the stairs and you just like caught off guard because you were fatigued. Then you basically lost your life. That we saw many tragedies like these in countries and regions where we see a large volume of construction activities. But so it's not just construction, right? There are many, many more other industries there where fatigue plays a huge source of these tragic accidents worldwide. I think especially in kind of the developing regions. And for Vocadian, we really want to address that. And our voice that mentioned earlier offers a much longer time horizon than the current solutions in the market. So in the current market, you see like the telematics or different sensors, wearables, right? It's actually sense when you're in the site. But for Vocadian, we detect it before even the workers started their day. So we can detect fatigue levels 12 hours or even more before the symptom actually arise. So in some ways, I understand the market, wearables in itself is kind of a predictive solution, but the time horizon for us is still too long to do anything meaningful. So for us is in hours, in like 12 hours, or even longer. So that gave your employees or the individuals a lot more time to respond. So this is Vocadian. So we started with the heavy industries, but in the longer run, we hope to leverage more modalities of AI and biomarkers, and we will use these technologies to also detect sickness, so diseases. And often in these industries that we operate in, diseases like COPD, or like these kind of respiratory diseases, right? These, because of the unique nature of the environmental factors, they itself present a much greater prevalence among the population. So as voice biomarkers, I think in the same nature of being predictive, we can integrate a same process of just documenting your voice, no, like assessing your voice, right? And then offering a predictive risk factors across multiple layers of risks that is critical to your health. So this is what we have at Vocadian at the moment.
All right, so Adolphus, I have a couple of clarifications for all our viewers. First of all, is
Yeah.
Vocadian an app or is it a variable or is it some kind of a recorder or what is Vocadian exactly? What is the product or service that this is?
Yeah, absolutely. Our core advantage is that actually we don't require any extra hardware than a phone.
The phone.
So we have, yeah, your like smartphone. So essentially it's a mobile application, right? So we mentioned, telematics and the other kind of sensors where the companies would need to buy extra hardware to make ready for the solutions. So we don't. We literally just need the mobile phones. Of course, we offer other mediums to measure. So in some of our sites in the mining industry where phones were prohibited in the site, so we work with the companies to provide some tablets, and they would just use the tablets before they start their operations. So they record a 30-second voice speech task, and I can detail it later on. And then that's it. So it's a very easy solution, and it has a much lower cost structure. So that's how we manage to enter, regions where, the kind of development levels is still starting or emerging. And then we can cover more of the population and deliver a greater impact.
Right. So if is this an app? Is it fair to say it's an app?
Yeah, it is an application.
It's an
Yeah.
application. And is this available on the Play Store or the Apple Store, or is this something that you provide only to potential customers?
Yeah, so it's available on the Play Store. It's also available on the App Store. We are actually testing on the App Store, but it's available on the Play Store. And because we target kind of companies, but not as an individual level. So, um, in the app, we'll first need to register the company. So you need kind of a code to access the service that we offer. Yeah.
This is a B2B model, basically.
This is a B2B model. Yeah.
B2B model. So we're going to add a link to the app in the description below for anybody who may be curious to take it.
Sure, sure, absolutely.
All
Yeah.
right. So from what I gather, basically it's a app in your phone or your tablet, and you speak into it for 30 seconds, and it's going to give you a response about your level of fatigue. Is that what it is, or does it measure other health parameters as well?
Yeah, so it starts with fatigue, and I mentioned circadian science earlier. So circadian science is sort of the foundation of how we predict. So it's a rhythm, right, of your body. So following the rhythm, then we manage to offer predictive analysis by looking for some very specific attributes in your voice. But that offers the insights about fatigue. But so that's our first kind of attack point. But later on, we will offer a much richer or wider range of diseases or body conditions that we can test. And this is because the voice, I think, not quite like what humans or what you expect to hear, but through the computers, it actually hears a lot more than humans can. And the differences, the small differences would tell a lot about your body in through, the uh, respiratory systems or even cognitive about your brain or Alzheimer's disease. There are a lot of evidences in the academic journals already.
Right. So, is this a new science and research that your company has conducted that has gotten you to this point of being able to identify fatigue and other parameters through voice? So, is this patented? Is this new research, or is this research that has already been done and you're using that and using it for some application?
Yeah, sure. This technology stems from some of the research efforts of my co-founder, who used to be in the media lab at MIT, where he works for a different range of biomarkers. So not just voice, but he later identified voice as the more scalable and more easy to implement kind of solutions or biomarkers to be applied within more sectors. So that's how we get started from with voice. And in the market, generally, there are different companies leveraging voice for different applications. But I think quite fortunately, we were kind of among the first few ones to actually start researching into this biomarker and to actually be able to commercialize it for a very specific function.
So, is this original research? It's fair to say this is original new research by a
Yeah, yeah,
co-founder,
yeah.
right?
Of course, I think for biomarker, it would be fair to say it's actually also highly specific to different conditions. So you could expect for a research for voice for COPD, different body conditions to be very different for each one of those.
Right.
And of course for fatigue as well. I think recently to respond to our growth, we also onboarded a dedicated expert that has a lot of experience working on voice and is commercialization. Yeah.
For somebody out there watching right now, some owner of a warehouse or some manager at a
Mm.
mine who might think of using your application with the workers at the warehouse, mine, or another place. I think one of the concerns they might have would be the degree of false positives or false negatives that might occur in such an application, because uh,
Mm.
I feel like anybody can moderate or change their voice. You or I could change our voice to make it appear more fatigued or more energetic, even right now. So, have you found any false positives, false negatives? What's the occurrence? What's the percentage? What's that like?
Yeah, I think you made a very valid point. So voice is something we could um,
Moderate.
maneuver or manipulate
Mm.
in some ways. So it can become a problem, but I think luckily with our solution, we have multiple, actually more than 100 attributes that we look for in the voice. So even when you try to fake it, you might be faking a few elements, but we might still be able to pick up with quite a high level of sensitivity. But of course, there will be some portion where you fake it and you could succeed in passing the test. But I think that's recognizable, and that's why we are working on identifying some of the confounders and to address it through change of the algorithm or use of a more kind of multimodal or addition of phenotyping, which means integrating your sleep data and different data, which itself could also address some of the confounders and to improve the accuracy of the model. But so far, I can share some data from our previous service with some of the sectors we served in Chile, in Latin America. So we actually saw a sensitivity level pretty much high, above 90%, but also of the specificity, which speaks to the false negatives. And we were actually able to identify or predict successfully accidents, which the current golden standard missed. So you can see that the model is actually quite robust in detecting, the real positives.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's real impact right there, and that's real impact for safety. Are you looking for investors, more investors at the moment, or is that not something you're going for right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So our company started in November 2022, around that time. And so from that time onwards, we actually commercialized and scaled up quite successfully in Chile. And as I mentioned, because we focus on heavy sectors, and mining is such a huge sector right now, in Chile being the largest exporter for a number of minerals globally. And we worked with a number of top 20 organizations in the mining sector in that region. And that kind of sets the scene of early success in our initial segment. But we are looking forward much farther for the vision that I illustrated just now with the disease prediction, and also be able to continue to grow and scale up our core segments with the heavy industries. So, for example, we recently are launching a pilot in the UK for the Heathrow Airport construction. Basically, the client there, they did not have established practice for fatigue management in the workforce. So we are the first to actually not just introduce this new biomarker, but to introduce a new paradigm of setting up an evidence-based approach to the management of fatigue and cognition risks for the frontline workers. So many of these global efforts are still going on, some being in initial discussion in Japan. So you could imagine just the business team, right? And to support that, the entire development teams is going on a very quick pace of growth. And investment would be critical for us to maintain this growth rate
Definitely.
and be able to deliver the pipeline that we anticipated for, let's say, 2025 or 2026. Right. So yeah, so we are actively seeking for
Investments.
seed investment. Yeah.
You've been a recipient of the Harvard Business School Alston Venture Fund and a grand prize winner at MIT of 100,000 US dollars.
Yeah.
You've also
Yeah.
been a grand prize winner of Harvard Health Lab Pitch Competition, McKinsey Health Tech Network, Harvard Innovation Labs, and alumni company of C10 Labs. You've already, the proof of concept is there, and it's been repeatedly confirmed by all of these awards. And I hope this interview can shed a little more light on your startup, and perhaps if any investors are watching, they might take some interest.
Sure. Absolutely. Thanks for that.
I'm also curious if you're looking to recruit people to your startup. Is that something you're open to doing? Students, young professionals, MBAs for the business side, or techies for the research side, perhaps?
Yeah, that's a good point. So for us, we actually have a core value at Vocadian. So we, as a research organization, like a research-oriented commercial organization, we believe in the importance of having fresh ideas. So so far, our team expanded pretty quickly in the past year, and we are actively looking for individuals who share a passion in health. I think in particular population health, and those who have an expertise in AI and voice biomarkers to help us scale this business successfully. But I think for the people that we're looking for, I think we most likely want to look for someone with a sense of compassion. Because for me, right, as a business co-founder, I think my value goes by business profits and revenue follows is followed by the purpose and the impact you can make. So if you can make true impact that could demonstrate a value in organizations or even societal benefits, right? So the companies or the public sector or government clients could see that, and you will be awarded in some ways. But I think for talents, yeah, absolutely. For business, for development, we are seeking actively. And yeah, if you know anybody who's interested, I mean, I definitely suggest them to approach us, and we should definitely be in the discussion.
Is there a careers page on your website or an email that you would like them to reach out to?
Yeah, so our email is business@vocadian.ai. So anyone interested, yeah, please feel free to contact us anytime.
Yeah, I think your focus and compassion, that's true stakeholder capitalism right there. That's capitalism at its best. And I just want to, point that out. And I think that's really lovely. That's beautiful.
Sure, yeah, you know me. I think I've been quite philosophical in some ways, even during my academic studies, right?
Adolphus, I've known you for what, 7, 8 years now, and I could attest to that.
Sure, thank you.
AI has taken center stage, and your focus with Vocadian is also AI in many ways. How do you see the rise of new AI applications impacting your startup? Is it a positive direction that you think they're going to impact, or will it be disruptive and affect you negatively?
Yeah, for us, definitely, this is a tailwind for us. So it definitely is a positive sign. So there are two perspectives. So one is from our company perspective, so a more product perspective. So our product is actually based on AI. And we leverage both predictive AI and generative AI. So for predictive AI, it's quite obvious because we use voice AI, like voice as a biomarker to predict. So if the model grows better, so definitely our sensitivity and all the accuracy could improve, and we will be directly benefiting from the improvement of this technology, right? And it's not just our product standalone, right? So it's also about the ecosystem. So I think what our value would improve when the entire ecosystem of having, say, more predictive biomarkers contributing to the management of a person's health, then you can achieve easily a greater network effects. And so that's why when we envision the product as an kind of AI SaaS model, we don't just look at our own products, but we look at kind of how we interact with the other ecosystems. So, for example, we work with sleep pod companies. So when we did, see kind of individuals with high fatigue levels, then some interventions could follow. and to solve the problems for the organization. So that's one example. The other example is that we are also in discussion with Philips. It's Signify, who does not only produce lighting, but also digital analytics. So imagine if the other AI would also take off in the other spaces, right? So that would significantly improve the product experience, the user experience. So that's good for us. And for Gen AI, so this is the more creative part of our business. So and this is sort of market insight driven. So when we launched the pilot in Chile, we were actually told by one of our major clients that actually training were also part of their struggle because the traditional model of training, having lecturers for the frontline workers definitely was not very well received. And exactly with our delivery of the voice speech or like the speech task, right, which is kind of a nugget uh, piece of information, is very digestible. So we use Gen AI to help convert their kind of depending on the business. But in that case, it was the safety information. So some safety protocols, and we were able to use Gen AI to turn that into the speech task we deliver to workers, and in a more contextual way, in a more digestible way. So I think not just the core model, but I think it illustrates that with some creativity, you could actually leverage AI to create new business models. So it's not just improving your business model. So yeah, I think it's a really good thing that we see it taking off rapidly right
Right.
now.
So for you, you welcoming the development of the AI ecosystem. It's not a threat to your startup in terms of displacing it. It's a you welcoming it.
Yeah. I think we should better leverage it,
Yeah.
right? Has already become a norm in some ways. And I think it would be unlike in, let's say, a year ago, where people might not even, I think the mass general of people would not have known that. I think even, um, the kind of older grandmother would already be leveraging AI in ways that they don't really recognize or realize.
All right, Adolphus. Moving on to the next question. Vocadian is not your first entrepreneurial initiative. This is actually, you've already started Muser before this. That was another startup you ran, and for some reason you decided to put a stop to that at some point. Could you tell us a little bit about Muser, what it was, what the idea was, and why you decided to stop it?
Yeah, so for Muser, it was also a MIT founded startup. So it was with actually with the same co-founder I'm having, and another friend who has an expertise in data analytics. So Muser basically improves the music therapy. I don't know if our audience knows music therapy enough, but basically it's kind of a therapy service which could speaks to conditions and resolve some of the conditions like depression or like anxiety. So it's more on a psychological kind of treatment, right? With Muser, we use analytics through biomarkers, again, biomarkers, but it was more like the biomarkers you would see with Apple Watch, like your heart rate or different kind of, everyday or the more widely known kind of biomarkers, with the insight of which to improve the delivery and the fidelity of music therapy service delivered by clinics. So back then we worked with some like uh, those people with a drug problem, right? So they when they try to remove that from their lifestyle, they struggle a lot. And we work with the clinics who has specialty in that regard to leverage that service to better monitor those patients to assure that these behaviors could be resolved by enabling a more easy time for them without, having too much psychological conditions and such.
By listening
And
to music or by listening to sounds.
yeah, by listening to music, but it was usually prescribed by a therapist. So it's a therapist led kind of music session or things like that. So back then, a pain point they observed was um, there's quite a long time before between each visits to the clinic, right? So you don't get a chance to really know your patients good enough, how they were reacting to, let's say, your music therapy and thus the effects of the music therapies. So with the biomarkers, you can better manage it. So the effects of your prescribed treatments and also kind of the way you deliver it or the way these information could be digested by your therapist. So this is the whole idea of improving. I think through the experience, we learned a lot about founding a company, but I think we also learned about how to manage other challenges. And the reason that we had Musa shut down was there were better opportunities for one of our co-founders back then. And I think it also turned out quite well for him later on. But I think the experience we developed through Muser helped a lot in the co-founding of Vocadian. Yeah, so definitely some of the genes were inherited somehow into the blood of Vocadian.
Now, I'm noticing a trend of your interest being on the intersection of sound and technology, using sound and technology. Any particular reason you're more fascinated with this intersection, or is this just accidental?
So it was definitely not accidental for Yujie, the co-founder. His kind of expertise in biomarkers. For me, it is more accidental. It's more like a collaborative. Is more like an opportunity through the collaboration with him himself. But for me, I took a more commercial angle into the founding of the startup or the venture. Yeah, but I think for me, voice is also it's as much interesting as it is challenging. So the interesting part is that it is actually something we use a lot every day. So you got a lot of chance to detect from a person's voice. Of course, with due consideration of, issues like privacy. But I think it's will become more so with, the new trends of the devices, right? So for example, I think for the VR glasses like Apple Vision or, the other system, I think increasingly we rely more on voice. So I think definitely there will be increasing demand there for voice and increased opportunity for Vocadian to better leverage this kind of medium to offer predictive insights. But the challenging part is that people, because it is quite new, so voice itself is not new, but leveraging voice to offer predictive insights is quite new. So that might attract some inertia within some organizations. Um, for example, I think we actually had a pilot where there were initially some voice from the worker unions around how voice might trigger like privacy concerns like that. So I think that itself might take time to educate people and to there's a time that that we require that would require some more efforts
Definitely.
to enable a smooth transition into the new kind
Mm.
of paradigm.
And do you feel your expertise in voice and you mentioned more than 100 variables within it that you are monitoring. Do you think that could find application also in law enforcement, perhaps in replacing polygraph tests, lie detector tests, things like that? You think you could also be able to detect some use this in lie detector tests basically for law enforcement around the world, or is that something that has that you not so
Hmm.
far thought about?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the enforcement level yet, but I think definitely we already see evidence of it being a substitute for some traditional drug testing, because we were actually reached out by a drug testing company, like a provider of drug and alcohol test, to use voice to detect to serve the same segment. So we definitely see ourselves as a substitute for that for these products. But I think for enforcement, then we need to prove with a larger sample size, right? Or you need to see more success to be able to adopt to the public sector. I think that's kind of the nature of the public sector, anyways.
Yeah. But that would be a very interesting application. I think if you could prove that and make that case, it would be. I think a lot of governments would be interested in working with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I also noticed you're the chapter lead at Meet Ventures, which is a VC fund based out of Hong Kong. And so I was wondering, what are the kinds of startups that Meet Ventures is interested in? What are they looking at, and what's your role at the VC fund?
Yeah, so Meet Venture is a Singaporean-based venture studio and venture capital. So they have just launched a fund. They're in the process of launching a new fund. And basically, we look at the more early stage ventures, and we are open to different segments. But I think primarily we are also very interested in data, so data related technologies. Yeah.
And what's your role there? What is it that you do?
Yeah, so I'm the chapter lead in Hong Kong. So I'm responsible for business development. So for to provide more context first, so Meet Ventures, it's no ordinary kind of venture house. So we offer also entrepreneurial guidance through kind of studio setup. So imagine like Antler, right? So pretty much like so we offer kind of guidance for entrepreneurs through competitions, but also the subsequent support. So I'm developing that service in Hong Kong. And I'm also attracting, different ecosystem partners and also promoting our kind of uh, studio and different programs in the region. So we have already had traction in Korea, and the rest of the ASEAN region, Singapore, Malaysia, in Indonesia. So for Meet Ventures, Hong Kong is a new market, and I'm opening that up a little bit to attract more dynamics into its ecosystem.
Okay, and does Meet Ventures support entrepreneurs only from Southeast Asia, South Asia, or from around the globe?
From so we support for around the globe, but our kind of surface region concentrates in Asia, yeah, in East
Asia with an
Asia.
interest in data, startups that have to do with data.
So what kind of data? You mean like tractions or like
No, no, you mentioned that Meet Ventures is more interested in
ah
startups that use data, database startups, tech
sure.
startups.
Sure, sure. So a lot of our ecosystem partners are also data technology companies, like for example, a few from Japan. While data is a focus, so for example, we want startups with um, pretty much like improving company operations, right? Let's say. So that's a very data intense and very strong case for us. But other than that, we also welcome different ventures. But it's just that I see, ventures with focus on data would have much advantage, working with our ecosystem partners to deliver and grow their solutions.
Right. And at what stage of the startup's journey does Meet Ventures support? Is it seed stage? Is it before? Is it after?
Sure. Sure. So it's the earlier stage. So from seed stage to Series A,
Okay.
we mostly take care of this stage of startup. Yeah.
Right. So if there's some young entrepreneur out there watching this, uh, they can reach out to Meet Ventures, or should they reach out to you with their idea?
Either. That's the same. Yeah. So and
Excellent.
I do encourage them to apply to the competitions
Okay.
and our support.
All right. So you're a venture fellow at Alpha Trio Capital. What's the work that Alpha Trio, what's the industries and sectors that Alpha Trio focuses on, and what's your work there like currently?
Yeah, sure. I think I would say that I'm very thankful for that opportunity. So first of all, just to give some brief context about Alpha Trio. So it is a actually conglomerate-backed venture capital fund in Hong Kong in some way that it is unique for being quite a leading sustainability-focused venture fund in Hong Kong and in the region. So it has three verticals in clean energy and then their core business in prop tech and also in sustainable food systems. But I think through which my most valuable takeaway was as the investment fellow. I actually had the opportunity to meet with a lot of impressive founders. One such was actually the founder of Da Vinci's surgery. So I don't know if you heard of, but it's the surgery robot, right? That's widely adopted around different corners of the world. And I think each time I hear about their story,
Mm,
but also the way that it is received by investors, I think these kind of dual layer of purpose gave me a lot of inspiration in my work at Vocadian. So not only that it provides kind of myself with the ability to think as an investor, how ideas would be perceived and how good communications are received. But I think it reminds me that, yeah, I mean, purpose is actually valued by investors, and it's not forgotten anywhere.
all right. Thank you, Dolphus. Um, so is Alpha Trio focused on Asia, or is it open to entrepreneurs from around the globe?
Sure. Yeah, Alpha Trio Capital is open to ventures around the globe.
Yeah.
And the its limited partners and everything is also coming from different parts of the world. And actually, they have a strong focus in the ASEAN market and in China, and actually also in the Middle East. That's the key area of focus, but global footprint,
So it's a
definitely.
sustainability focused global venture capital fund based in Hong Kong.
Based in Hong Kong, yes.
Excellent. Excellent. And again, like the previous VC firm, if somebody has an idea, if some entrepreneur watching us has this idea that they want to reach out to at Alpha Trio, they maybe they have a sustainability or circular economy based product. Would you be the person they should be reaching out to?
I think so since I'm no longer in the position, but I think definitely they should consider Alpha Trail Fund, at least to have a discussion.
But who should
Uh,
they be reaching out to at Alpha Trio? Would you be taking those mails or messages?
no, I was at Alpha Trail, but some of my colleagues remain to be there, so you can contact their mailbox. So I think they're quite active in receiving and reviewing the different ventures where they see an alignment in interest and values.
Okay, excellent. So, University of Toronto, University of Hong Kong, McKinsey analyst, and two startups, and a bunch of other experiences in between. Across your college and subsequent career, any funny, fun, interesting, memorable experiences that you might want to share with our audience? Anything that you look back on very fondly?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's quite a long journey there, right? And it's quite a number of pivots. And I think, but underlying of all of these, it always goes back to my experience at the University of Toronto. It was architecture and now it is health economics. But I think what tied them all together is sort of my you could say an obsession in social values. I think these are all the reasons why I think in all the majors you kind of saw a social science focus or kind of an emphasis in different philosophical values there. And I vividly remember in the University of Toronto during that time, there was a paper that I wrote about how, in post-war Japan, architecture has emerged. And I think it's, for me, a miniature of the different technological mediums, right? So for technologies, it's not just, so for the Japan example, right? The architecture was seen as an technology to help the people grow their economy and to fulfill their needs in terms of desire for success, but also real tangible needs for land, which then became quite scarce in Tokyo. So I think for technology, in some ways, we need to think out of the box. But in that process, I think it's also important not to lose focus on the humans and the different social values. And I think this is the lesson and the inspiration that has given me through that piece of writing. And though it seems quite insignificant in some ways, but it did play quite a significant role in my career. Yeah.
Is that writing published somewhere online?
Unfortunately, it's not really openly published.
Okay,
So it's kind of a more you could say personal writing in
that's
some
writing.
ways. Yeah,
Any
yeah.
any favorite architect? Any architect that you admire, present, past?
Yeah, so for me, it was actually I am Pei.
Okay.
I think I'm Pei was known to not have a very distinct characteristics in his work, despite all the geometries. But he personally claimed that he doesn't like to be called to or referred to as any kind of theorist or be categorized as a particular style. The favorite part that I like him is he actually can take architecture as a diplomatic means in different cultures. And I think for any companies or any person, individual, right, you really need to have that respect for local cultures. And I think it's really evident in his success in many ways. And I think uh, uh, also part of his character should really be appreciated for example, his perseverance, right? If you heard of his project on the Louvre, it was a lot of noises, or a lot of um, uh, uh, opinions around his piece during his initial kickoff, but he managed to provide that vision. He believes in what he does, and the most important part is that he also enable people to see the good part, the positive part, and to remove the more kind of negative part. And I think that ability to instill hope and instill a anticipation for future, a better future, I think is something an architect or what a good character of an architect, and that could be seen as a good reference for many other professions, and even entrepreneurs.
Right. Thank you so much for your time, Adolphus. It was wonderful learning about your initiatives, your entrepreneurship, and your journey along the way that led you here. And thank you for your time.
My honor. Yeah, thanks, Krish.